It's strange how a single night can tear a family apart. I remember the sound of her laughter echoing through the hallway. My stepdaughter, my own heart's adopted child. I never imagined that same laughter would one day become a memory I couldn't bear to hear. When I walked into her room that morning, her closet was empty. The drawers were pulled out. And the small safe, the one where I had kept $200,000 for our family business, stood wide open. The money was gone. And so was she. At first, I thought something terrible had happened to her. But then I found the note. Just one line, written in her familiar handwriting. Don't look for me. That moment didn't just break me. It shattered everything I believed about love, trust, and family. There are some mornings you never forget. Not because they are special, but because they change everything you thought you knew about love. That morning started like any other. The sun crept gently through the curtains. Birds outside the window sang the same song they always did. And the smell of coffee filled the kitchen. I remember humming quietly as I set the table. It felt like an ordinary day. Until it wasn't. I knocked on her door, the way I always did before waking her up. "Clara, breakfast is ready," called smiling. Silence. I thought she was still asleep. But when I opened the door, the world seemed to tilt. Her bed was empty, perfectly made as if untouched. The closet doors hung open, clothes missing. The vanity was cleared, and the little picture frame she kept on her desk, the one of the three of us laughing last Christmas, was gone. At first, I thought maybe she had gone to stay with a friend. Teenagers do that sometimes, I told myself. Maybe she just needed space after our argument last night. I had scolded her for coming home late. I regretted it immediately, but I never imagined it would be our last conversation. When I noticed the open safe, my knees gave out. The small metal door was hanging loose, the lock broken. Inside, the envelope that once held $200,000, money meant to invest in our small family business, was gone. Completely gone. I remember staring at that empty space for a long time, unable to move, unable to breathe. My husband, Michael, walked in moments later, half-dressed for work. "What's going on?" he asked, seeing my face. I pointed at the safe, unable to speak. He rushed forward, eyes wide, flipping through the papers scattered on the floor. "Where is it?" he whispered. I shook my head slowly. "She took it." He froze, his hand still on the safe. "What do you mean she?" "Clara," I said. The name felt foreign leaving my lips, like it didn't belong to the same girl I'd raised for 10 years. Michael turned toward her room, scanning it like a man looking for a lie that could undo the truth. "Maybe someone broke in," he said, desperate. "Maybe." "No," I interrupted, my voice shaking. "No one broke in. Look around." She took her things, her bag, even the photo frame. He stood there, silent, his jaw tight. Then his phone buzzed. It was a text, short, sharp, final. "Don't look for me." The same words that were scribbled on the note I found on her desk. My hands trembled as I held the piece of paper, written in her neat handwriting, the loops of her letters so familiar they hurt to look at. Michael's face turned pale. He sank into the chair, staring at nothing. "She wouldn't," he muttered. "She wouldn't do this." But she did. I felt something inside me crack. Not anger at first, just disbelief. The kind that leaves you numb, where your body moves but your soul stays behind. I picked up her hairbrush from the desk, strands of her hair still tangled in it. And for a moment I wanted to believe she'd walk back through that door any second, laughing, saying it was all a joke. But the silence told the truth. By noon we had called the police. They asked for photos, details, any sign of where she might have gone. I gave them everything. Her friends' names, her social media, the car she sometimes borrowed. Each question felt like an accusation. "How could she do this?" the officer asked softly. I didn't answer. Because how could I explain that love makes you blind? That when you raise a child, even one who isn't your own by blood, you give them everything. your trust, your name, your heart, and never imagine they could use it to break you. That night, I sat alone in her empty room. The walls still smelled like her perfume, sweet and light. On her desk was a single bracelet, the one I'd given her on her 16th birthday. It had her initials engraved. She'd left it behind, maybe by accident, maybe on purpose. I held it in my hand until I fell asleep crying. Days turned into weeks. No word. No sign. The police traced her phone to another city but lost the signal soon after. She had vanished, with the money, with her friends, with everything I thought we were. Michael became a shell of himself. He stopped going to work, spent hours pacing the living room, replaying old videos of her on his phone. Maybe she was forced, he'd say. Maybe someone made her do it. But deep down I knew better. There was no force stronger than choice. And she had made hers. At night, I'd hear Michael crying quietly in bed. He thought I couldn't hear, but I did. I didn't cry anymore. My tears had turned into something colder. Regret, guilt, maybe anger. Because every time I closed my eyes, I kept seeing her smile. That same innocent, beautiful smile that once lit up our home, now turned into the memory of our ruin. And that's when I made a silent promise to myself. I would find her. Not to take revenge, not to punish, but to understand why. Because when someone you love betrays you, the worst pain isn't losing the money. It's realizing that you never really knew them at all. I promised myself I would find her. Not to punish, but to understand why. That vow became the only thing keeping me alive. Each morning I woke up with the same question echoing in my head. Why did she do it? First I thought the police would solve it. They called twice a week, asking if I'd heard from her. But weeks turned into months, and their questions began to sound more like sympathy than progress. People stop searching for the missing. They start comforting the ones left behind. Michael tried to keep hope alive. He printed flyers called Old School Friends, even drove to the next city when someone claimed to have seen a girl who looked like her. But every lead faded into silence. The money, our future, was gone, but what hurt more was the emptiness she left behind. Her room stayed exactly as it was that morning, frozen in time. I couldn't bring myself to pack away her things. Sometimes I would sit on her bed, holding the bracelet she'd left behind, wondering if she missed us at all. One evening, while scrolling through her old photos, I noticed something strange. In almost every recent picture, the same boy appeared, a tall kid with a crooked smile. His arm was always around her shoulder. I remembered him vaguely. He'd come over once for dinner. A friend from school, she'd said. I hadn't thought much of it then. I opened her messages on the family computer, something I'd promised I'd never do. Most were harmless, filled with teenage chatter. But buried between them was one that made my hands tremble. Tomorrow night. Bring the cash. After that we're free. Free from what? From whom? I didn't know. But I knew then that she hadn't just stolen the money. She'd run away with help. I showed Michael the message. His face went pale. We need to tell the police. I already did, I said quietly. But they can't trace deleted accounts. He rubbed his temples, defeated. Then what do we do? I looked at the message again. The timestamp was 2 nights before she vanished. We go to where she used to hang out, I said. Her friends know something. The next morning we drove to the small cafe near her old school. The place smelled of burnt coffee and rain. I spotted one of her classmates, Maya, sitting by the window. She froze when she saw us. Please, I said gently, sitting across from her. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need to know she's okay. Maya's eyes filled with guilt. She didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. She just wanted to get away. From what? Michael asked sharply. Maya hesitated. From feeling like she didn't belong. She said you looked at her differently. That you only cared about money. I felt a sting in my chest. That's not true. I know, she said quickly. But she believed it. And that boy, Eli, told her running away was the only way to be free. Where is she now? Asked. I don't know, Maya said, tears brimming. But she talked about California. Said there was someone there who could help them start over. California felt impossibly far away. Michael and I sat in silence on the drive home. The rain tapped against the windshield like a slow drumbeat. Finally he said, You think she hates us? I shook my head. No. I think she's lost. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the last few months. Her quiet dinners, her distracted eyes, the way she stopped saying goodnight. I had been too busy worrying about numbers in a bank account to notice the emptiness growing in her. Maybe the money had been her escape ticket. Maybe betrayal was her way of screaming for help. 2 weeks later the phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello, I answered cautiously. Was. Then a faint, trembling voice. Mom. My heart nearly stopped. Clara. She was crying. I didn't know who else to call. Where are you? Are you safe? I can't tell you. Sorry. I messed up. Tears filled my eyes. Just come home. We'll figure everything out. I can't. They'll find me. Please don't look for me. Who will find you? Asked, panic rising. But she hung up. The line went dead, leaving me with nothing but the sound of my own heartbeat. I tried calling back, but the number was disconnected. Still, hearing her voice gave me something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Michael wanted to trace the call, but I stopped him. If she's afraid, we have to be careful. Forcing her back might push her further away. He looked at me, bewildered. How can you be calm? I'm not, I said. But if I lose my head now, I'll lose her forever. That night, I sat by the window again, watching the city lights flicker. Somewhere out there my stepdaughter, my daughter, was alone, scared, maybe regretting everything. I whispered a prayer that she would find her way back, not to the house, but to herself. Days later, an envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside was a small photograph. Clara, standing near a bus stop, smiling faintly. On the back, a single sentence in her handwriting. I'm sorry. I'll make it right. I pressed the photo to my chest. The tears came easily this time, but they weren't from pain. They were from relief. For the first time in months, I believed she still carried a piece of home in her heart. I didn't know if she'd ever return, or if the money was gone forever. But as I looked at her picture, I realized something. Forgiveness isn't a moment. It's a decision you make every day, even when the person you're forgiving is miles away. And in that quiet moment, I decided to keep choosing her, again and again, until she found her way back. The photograph stayed on my kitchen table for days. Every morning, I'd sit across from it, cup of coffee growing cold, staring at Clara's faint smile. The message on the back, I'm sorry. I'll make it right, played through my head like a hymn. I didn't know if it was a promise or a goodbye, but it was something to hold on to, and that was enough. Michael noticed a change in me. The sharpness in my voice softened. I no longer blamed him or myself every time the phone rang with no news. Hope had quietly replaced anger, though I didn't dare say it aloud. Hope, after all, is a fragile thing. It needs silence to survive. One evening, I spread an old map across the dining table. California was circled in red. I traced the lines with my finger, thinking of highways and strangers, of nights spent in bus stations and borrowed rooms. Where did she sleep? What did she eat? Who comforted her when she cried? Michael leaned over my shoulder. We could go, he said. To California. He nodded. We can start there. I looked at him, tired eyes, guilt carved into his face, and realized that searching together might heal more than one wound. All right, I said. We'll go. The drive took 2 days. The miles blurred into silence, broken only by the sound of rain and the occasional hum of old songs from the radio. Somewhere near the border, Michael reached for my hand. I didn't pull away. We stopped at small diners, asking questions no one could answer. "Have you seen this girl?" I'd ask, sliding the photograph across the counter. Some shook their heads politely. Others didn't even look. Yet each no carried a strange comfort. It meant she was still out there, still moving. On the second night, we reached a coastal town. The ocean was louder than I remembered, its rhythm constant and unforgiving. We rented a small motel room that smelled of salt and old wood. I lay awake listening to the waves and thought of Clara as a child, the way she used to draw oceans with blue crayons, saying she wanted to live by the sea someday. Maybe she already had. The next morning we went to a community shelter. The woman at the front desk looked kind, the kind of person who had seen every kind of loss. I handed her the photo. She studied it carefully. "She was here," she said finally. "About a week ago." My heart stopped. "Is she still here?" The woman shook her head. "No. She left with a group heading north." She didn't say much, just that she had made a mistake and needed to fix it. I swallowed hard. "Did she look okay?" "She looked tired," the woman replied gently. "But there was something in her eyes. Determination, maybe." She said she had someone to make peace with. I thanked her, holding back tears. As we walked out, Michael squeezed my hand. "She's trying," he whispered. "She's coming back to us." We followed every faint trace. Bus schedules, card transactions, any whisper of her name. Each clue led to another dead end, but strangely, I didn't feel lost anymore. The search had turned into something else. A journey through my own forgiveness. At night we'd talk about her. Stories from when she was little, moments we'd forgotten. Michael confessed how afraid he had been when I first entered their lives. "I worried she'd never accept you," he said. "But she did. You became her mother, even if she never said it." I smiled sadly. Maybe that's why it hurt so much. One night, in a small town north of Sacramento, we stopped at a diner. The waitress, a young girl with bright eyes, glanced at the photo and froze. "I saw her," she said. "She came in here 2 days ago, paid for coffee with a $1 and asked about the nearest church." My chest tightened. "Did she say anything else?" The waitress hesitated. "She said she needed forgiveness." Outside, the wind carried the scent of rain. Michael looked at me. "A church," he said. "That's where she's heading." We found it on the edge of town, a small white chapel surrounded by tall pines. The doors were open, candles flickering inside. My heart pounded as we stepped in. And there she was, sitting in the front pew, shoulders trembling, her hair longer and wilder than before. She turned when she heard our footsteps. For a moment, time folded in on itself. The months apart, the sleepless nights, the unanswered questions, all collapsing into that single breath when her eyes met mine. "Mom," she whispered. I froze, every emotion I'd buried rising at once. Relief, anger, love, grief. I wanted to run to her, to hold her, but my body wouldn't move. She stood slowly, tears streaking down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she said. "I ruined everything." Michael's voice cracked. "You didn't ruin everything. You just got lost." She shook her head. "I took the money. I thought it would make me free, but it didn't. I spent most of it trying to keep people happy. People who left me the moment it was gone." I took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Then come home," I said softly. "We'll figure out the rest." "I don't deserve that." "No one does," I said. "That's why it's called forgiveness." She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. When I reached her, she didn't resist. She fell into my arms, trembling like a child. For the first time in a long time, the world felt still. That evening, as we sat outside the chapel, Watching the sun sink behind the trees, Clara told us everything. About the boy who promised freedom, the fear of never being enough, the regret that came too late. Each word was an apology, and each tear washed away a little more pain. When she finally looked up, her eyes were clearer. "I want to make it right," she said. "You already have," I told her. We didn't know what tomorrow would bring, how to repay the debt, how to rebuild the trust, but in that golden light, none of it mattered. We were together and that was enough. The drive home was quieter than I expected. No arguments, no questions, just the soft hum of the road beneath us and the sound of Clara's breathing in the back seat. She had fallen asleep halfway through the journey, her head resting against the window, her face peaceful for the first time in months. I watched her through the rearview mirror, and for a fleeting moment, she looked like a little girl again, the same child who used to sing along with the radio, who would lean on my shoulder when thunder scared her. Now, after everything, she was coming home not as a child, but as someone who had seen too much too soon. When we finally pulled into the driveway, the house looked different. Or maybe it was just us. The walls that had once felt hollow now felt alive again. Fragile, yes, but breathing. Clara hesitated before stepping out of the car. "It feels strange," she whispered. "Strange?" I asked softly. "Like I don't belong here anymore." I turned to her. "Then let's make it yours again." Inside, the air smelled of dust and time. The photos on the wall hadn't moved. The clock still ticked the same. But somehow the house felt warmer. Michael carried her bag upstairs without a word, and when he came back down, his eyes were wet. Over dinner, silence sat with us. Not heavy, just cautious. Like the first moments after a long storm, when the world is still figuring out if it's safe to breathe again. Clara finally broke it. "I know sorry isn't enough." I set my spoon down gently. "Sorry isn't supposed to be enough," I said. "It's supposed to be honest." She nodded, eyes down. "I'll find a way to pay back what I took. I've already found a job near the shelter." Michael reached across the table, his voice rough. "It's not the money, Clara. It's the distance. You can't pay that back with dollars." She looked up, her eyes glistening. "Then how do I fix it?" "By staying," I said. "By trying every day." The days that followed weren't perfect. Some mornings were quiet, others tense. Trust doesn't rebuild in a week. It rebuilds in moments, in small, almost invisible acts. Like the way she started helping in the kitchen again, standing beside me as I chopped vegetables. Or how she left little notes on the fridge. "Bought groceries, don't forget your tea, love you." Every note was like a brick laid carefully in the wall we were rebuilding. One afternoon, I found her sitting in her room, the same room that had once felt like a wound. She was holding the bracelet I'd given her years ago. "I kept it," she said when she saw me at the door. "It was in my bag the whole time. I just couldn't look at it." I sat beside her, the sunlight spilling across the floor between us. "Do you remember what I told you when I gave it to you?" She nodded. "That families don't have to match to belong." I smiled softly. "And that's still true. You're still mine, Clara, even after everything." She broke down then, sobbing into my arms. It wasn't the loud, desperate kind of crying. It was quiet, cleansing, the kind that washes away the walls between hearts. Weeks passed, and the rhythm of life slowly returned. Michael started working again, Clara took evening shifts at a bookstore, and I went back to volunteering. The house filled with new sounds, laughter, conversations, and the occasional argument that ended with hugs instead of slammed doors. But the biggest change was in how we saw one another. There were no more assumptions, no unspoken fears. Every emotion, guilt, love, gratitude, found its place at the table. One night after dinner, Clara asked, "Do you think you'll ever trust me completely again?" I looked at her carefully. "Trust isn't something you wait to have. It's something you build together. We'll keep building it every day." She smiled through tears. Then I'll keep trying. The first real sign of healing came unexpectedly. Michael found Clara in the living room, playing one of his old records, a song from their past. He stood in the doorway, watching silently as she hummed along. Then slowly he joined her. No words, no apologies, just a father and daughter sharing music again. When the song ended, he said quietly, "You remind me so much of your mother." She froze. "Do you miss her?" "Every day," he said. "But having you back, it feels like she's close again." Clara walked over and hugged him tightly. I watched from the hallway, my eyes stinging. Forgiveness was no longer just an idea, it was happening right there, note by note, heart by heart. By the end of the month, Clara had saved enough from her job to replace a small fraction of what she took. She handed me an envelope one morning. "Mom," she said shyly, "I know it's not much, but I want to start giving back." I took it, looked at her for a long moment, and then handed it back. "Keep it," I said. "Use it to build your future. That's how you'll repay us." She smiled, a genuine full smile I hadn't seen since before the betrayal. That evening, she wrote in her journal, and I caught a glimpse of the words as I passed by. "Sometimes the hardest part of forgiveness is forgiving yourself." Spring arrived early that year. The house bloomed with warmth, literal and emotional. The garden she used to love was alive again, filled with flowers she'd planted. One afternoon, as we sat outside together, she said, "You know what's strange? I used to think freedom meant leaving. Now I think it means coming home." I looked at her, at Michael, at the sunset painting our faces gold, and for the first time in a long time I felt something like peace. Betrayal had broken us, but forgiveness had rebuilt us. Not the same, but stronger, kinder, more real. Because families aren't perfect. They're not built to stay unbroken. They're built to heal again and again, as long as love remains. It's strange how quickly a house can forget the sound of pain. Months had passed since Clara's return, yet sometimes I'd wake up expecting to hear silence, that deep, hollow silence that once filled every corner. Instead, I'd hear laughter from the kitchen, the soft hum of a song from her room, or the steady rhythm of life moving forward. Peace had returned, not loudly, but gently, like a whisper that grew roots. Clara was different now. The restless fire that once made her run away had softened into a quiet determination. She worked hard, studied again, and began volunteering at the shelter that had once helped her. She never called herself healed, but every day she got a little closer. Sometimes I'd watch her from afar and wonder how something so broken could look so whole again. One evening, as I folded laundry, she walked in holding an envelope. "This came for you," she said, handing it over. Inside was a letter, official-looking, from the bank. It was confirmation that the last portion of our stolen funds had been recovered. The boy she had run away with had been caught trying to use the stolen cash months ago. Most of it had been returned to our account. I sat down slowly, the paper trembling in my hands. "It's over," I whispered. Clara looked unsure. "Does that mean you'll forget what happened?" I smiled faintly. "No. We don't erase the past, Clara. We just stop letting it control us." Later that night, she knocked softly on my door. "I've been thinking," she said, "about everything. About what I did, and how you still loved me after it." I motioned for her to sit. She hesitated, then sat beside me. "I used to think love was something you could lose," she continued. "Like money or freedom. But you showed me it's not. It's something you keep giving, even when it hurts." Her words filled the room with quiet warmth. "I was angry at you once," I admitted softly. "Not for the money. For leaving. For making me feel like I wasn't enough to stay for." She looked down, eyes glistening. "I didn't run because of you. I ran because I didn't know who I was without the mistakes I made. And I thought running would fix that." "And did it?" "Yes." She shook her head. "No. It just made me realize that every road away from home eventually leads back to it. I reached for her hand and she squeezed it tightly. The next morning, sunlight poured into the kitchen. Michael was already there making pancakes, his specialty. He looked up and smiled. "Family breakfast." Clara grinned. "I'll make the coffee." As we sat down together, I realized how small, ordinary moments could feel like miracles. The same table that had once witnessed tears and silence was now full of laughter. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't need to. Every word we spoke was proof that we'd survived it. After breakfast, Clara surprised us both. "I've been saving up," she said. "There's a community art program downtown. They teach kids to express emotions through painting. I want to volunteer there, maybe even study art again." Michael's smile widened. "You'd be great at that." She laughed softly. "I used to think I didn't deserve to create anything beautiful. But I guess forgiveness is art too. It just takes a different kind of brush." That evening I went for a walk alone. The sky was painted with the kind of sunset that makes you stop and breathe. The world around me was quiet, and for the first time in a long time my heart was too. I thought about all that had happened, the betrayal, the loss, the anger, the search, the return. And I realized something simple yet powerful. Forgiveness doesn't change what happened. Changes what happens next. When I reached the small park near our home, I saw a family playing, a mother chasing her child, laughter echoing in the breeze. It reminded me of the early days when Clara first came into my life. She wasn't born from me, but she was born to me. Through every shared moment, every small act of love. I sat on a bench, pulled out my notebook, and began to write. Betrayal broke us once. But love rebuilt us. Not perfectly, not quickly, but completely. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting the wound. It's about remembering that it healed. I closed the notebook and smiled. That night, Clara came into my room again, this time holding an old photo, the one she had taken when she left, the three of us laughing by the Christmas tree. "I kept it," she said quietly. "All those months. This picture reminded me of who I wanted to come back to." She handed it to me. The photo was worn, the edges frayed, but the faces, our faces, were still full of light. "Can we put it back?" she asked. "Where it used to hang." We went to the hallway together and hung the frame back on the wall. For a long moment we just stood there looking at it. The laughter in that picture didn't feel like a memory anymore. It felt like a promise kept. As the night deepened, I sat by the window one last time, my favorite spot. The stars were out, calm and endless. I thought about the journey, how easily trust can shatter, and how stubbornly love can rebuild it. She stole $200,000 once. But what she gave back, through tears, through courage, through forgiveness, was worth far more. And as the wind rustled softly through the trees, I whispered to the stars, "I forgive you, Clara. Not because you earned it, but because we both deserve peace." The house was quiet again, but this time it was the quiet of healing. And in that silence I knew, our family was whole once more.